All right, Shalom. Before we go any further, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to the Heavenly Father and His only begotten Son, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakah HaKodash, the bonus the apostles, the bishops, the great millstone of DCS, former sent truth according to the Bible and Roel, and peace and blessings so reflect to the nation of Israel. Take the spirit and power of Yahweh Shema Shai when they get to the Lord's willing and edifying lesson. Today's lesson is going to be, centered upon the fact that, the devil was going to show his horns, right? And really showing his horns, a lot of our people are still, deceived by, the words that come out of his mouth, right? A lot of our people are ultimately blinded. Scripture tells us whom the God of this world have blinded the minds of those who believe not. Right? And our people who are joined onto this system are going to find themselves in a pitiful case when this, deal goes down, right? When he comes down with a sword, as, our people are investing, all their time, energy, in the hopes that as long as they, keep, doing everything Esau Edom says to do, that they'll have their slice of the pie of this American dream, even if they have to experience it, in their 50s or 60s, even if they don't experience, but their children experience it. You see, people are living off of the hope factor that eventually one day things will be, full of, equality, right? Equality will run through the streets of America. This is Proverbs 25 and 19. It says confidence. In confidence, meaning with fidence, meaning faith or fidelity, right? Or fidelity which goes into your faith, right? So confidence or faith in an unfaithful man in the time of trouble, right? And Esau Edom has been unfaithful. He's been a truce breaker. He showed time and time again why he is not to be, trusted, dependent on, how many natural disasters has happened. And, DJ Trump, our, former president, say that we're not going to get on and help this country. And normally it's one of the tribes who they're not willing to help. And since DJ Trump, the king of Babylon, has gotten into office, it's been a full-on persecution against the tribes, right? Both northern and southern kingdom, right? And things get swept under the rug, and, people forget. It's funny how soon people forget about the persecution that just happened last week or that is still going on. But since it's not in mainstream media, they think everything is fine and dandy. You see? It says confidence in an unfaithful man in the time of trouble. Right, and this is what we've been warning our people about: a time of trouble, a time like none other. A time of trouble, is here. It's really bad right now when you really think about, the quality of food that you're subject to eat. When you think about the quality of air when you go outside. When you think about your water, source and how it's all contaminated. When, things are bad now, but people are able to, stay hooked up to the system with these, devices, whether it be your phone, social media, video games, the chemicals that are in the food, sex, drugs, and alcohol, right? As in rock and roll, right? Which, that's the YN music today. You see, it says confidence in an unfaithful man in the time of trouble is like a broken tooth and a foot out of joint. Meaning it's unreliable. It's not going to get the job done. You can't use a broken tooth when it's time to eat. You can't run away or walk, on that foot when it's broken. And Esau, Edom, has broken, his covenants and promises that he's made with our people, time and time again, right? This is Psalms 55 and 20. He hath put forth his hand against such as be at peace with him. He hath broken his covenant. So our people who are trying to be at peace with the devil, Esau, Edom, those who are trying to be at peace with him, well, he's going to put forth his hand against you. He's going to break any type of agreement that you have of, working, your 9-to-5 job, paying your taxes, and the government would provide and protect. The government will, help you guys out. He's going to break any type of agreements that you think that you have. In the prophets, the men of your nation, that Yahweh Shema Shai has risen up, telling you to turn back to the Lord, are giving you warning about these things. That, behold, we are yet this day in the land of our captivity, for a punishment. And Esau, Edom was never meant to, be looked at as some type of savior. Scripture say no man would buy us, no man would redeem us. And Esau, Edom is part of that category. Scripture say that he laid upon us, a continual stroke, even unto this very day, right? It says he had put forth his hand, such as be at peace with him. He had broken his covenant. The words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet were they drawn swords. This whole recent Venezuela thing, they just said this is our country, this is our land now. We're gonna take over it. We're gonna run it. This is basically part of USA. Oh man, that's the funniest thing ever. That's basically what they said, bro. So our people, don't realize this man is, waging war. Here in this last day, Esau, his warpath has never ended. He's stayed in that spirit of war, and he's gonna, even though he comes with smooth words and acts as if and paints a narrative as he's fixing the problem, and whether these are real Americans on the internet, rejoicing and agreeing, or if it's his, because there's a theory called the dead internet theory. How a lot of, comments, even a lot of content that you see on the internet is, it's been AI generated. It's bots, on the comment board. And that the internet really is really dead when it comes to people posting content. As much as you think, people, there's not enough influencers out there. There's, and enough people making comments. So that's why, I'm going a little side note. That's why, you turn in your phones, because, you give back your phones, especially these iPhones, they have to trade in. So that's a little conspiracy theorist, thing I heard recently. Which, I heard that before, but, recently heard it again. This is Psalm 55 and 22. It says, cast thy burden upon the Lord, and he shall sustain thee. Because Esau, he's a, what are you going to do against this man? He has all the, he's ruling the world with the sword, his weaponry, he has, technology, he has all the wealth and resources of the earth, so the burdens, that he tries to lay upon, us as the average day, working class, we're casting our burdens upon Yahweh Shema Shai. We're putting our trust and faith in the Lord to be with us, during the times of trouble, that are really, already very, present, in these last days. See, a prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. It says, cast thy burden upon the Lord, and he shall sustain thee. He shall never suffer the righteous to be moved, because the righteous are going to be founded upon a rock. Let me get this precept here in Proverbs 14 and 15. The simple believeth every word, right? And that's what our people are. Our people are very simple to believe every word that's coming out of Esau, Edom's mouth. It says the simple believe every word, but the prudent man looketh well to his going. But the prudent man, the wise man, the man that has foresight, the man that's been gifted with prudence, who looks at the future, very cautiously. He moves with caution. Realizing the dangers, that are all around him. Prudent man looketh well to his going. So we're being very careful, in how we conduct ourselves here upon these last days, because we understand that we're trying to stay in the good graces of Yahweh Shema Shai. We're not trying to provoke the Holy One of Israel to jealousy by occupying our time for things that are, in our mind, good uses of time, but not great uses of time in the eyes of Yahweh Shema Shai. This is Isaiah 30. All right, because you got to feed your family. You got to go to work. So you got to pay bills. You got to, keep lights on at the house. But those things shouldn't hinder you from keeping the main thing, right? It's in Isaiah 30 and 1. Woe to the rebellious children, saith the Lord, that take counsel, but not of me. Right? And the counsel of the Lord are his prophets. And we have a bunch of Israelites, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans that are taking counsel, here in these last days, running down to Esau, Edom, running down to your local false pastor in the church, getting, wisdom and advice, counsel about how they should be living their lives here in these last days, and our people, Chip said what, they have not gone into the gaps, our people aren't really, pointing out and getting into the nitty gritty of what the problem the planet Earth is, It's always work harder, you could do it, If you put down the phone and the distractions, you can be enjoying the American dream too. When America is circling the drain, this kingdom's really finished out here. It says, woe to rebellious children, saith the Lord, that take counsel, but not of me, and that cover with a covering, but not of my spirit, that they may add sin to sin. Right? So our people are trying to cover themselves with the shadow of this world, right? All so they can continue on in what they want to do, in their pleasures and their lust. Let me go back to Proverbs 14, and we'll read verse 12 this time. It says, there is a way which seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. You see? It says, there is a way which seemeth right unto a man. There's a way, that seems right. It seems righteous. It seems righteous to, trust in the system of America. This is a God-fearing country. This is a country that pushes love, equality. This is a country where people fight for equality. And, there's some bad apples, but, all we have to do is get those bad apples out of this country, and it's going to be good. I saw a video of this Northern Kingdom Jake, probably Iskarite, and this Somalian woman arguing on the road, blocking up the whole street, and all she kept saying was, I'm a citizen. I was born here. I was born here. you need to go back to your country. Not knowing that both of them are probably dealing with all type of, parasites in their body. Both of them are being poisoned by the same air. It's all, and she was probably more than likely a Jake. Couldn't really tell. I don't really know, to be honest. Who really knows? Could be a heathen woman, could be a Jake. The point is, people don't even realize that they're being oppressed here in this society. The average person doesn't even realize that they're being oppressed in America, right? And that's why the end thereof are going to be the ways of death, because in their oppression, they have sought after, carnality in the flesh to distract them of the reality of the hell that's really going on, right? And a carnal mind, a mind that's endowed in just continuing, the flesh, and never tap into the spirit of Yahweh Shema Shai, is not able to please the Most High. This is Isaiah 30:2, that walked to go down into Egypt and have not asked at my mouth, to strengthen themselves in the strength of Pharaoh and to trust in the shadow of Egypt. All right, our people are trying to make, they're weak now, but they're trying to become strong by trusting in Babylon the Great. Our people are trying to be strong by trusting in Babylon the Great. It says that walk to go down into Egypt and have not asked at my mouth, to strengthen themselves in the strength of Pharaoh and to trust in the shadow of Egypt. Therefore shall the strength of Pharaoh be your shame, and the shadow of Egypt be your confusion. All right? Because here in Revelations 12, therefore rejoice ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devils come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he have but a short time. See, Esau, Edom, he knows he has but a short time. That's why he's moving in the manner that he is moving in, right? So he's about to come down, having great wrath upon you everyday Americans, and he's already coming down, but when that sword, is being shown, and, the propaganda machine, and, is pointing the Israelites as the enemy, even that, brothers that brought the clip out, that recent, the leader of Venezuela basically said that the true Israelites, are not those imposters in the Holy Land, So a lot of things are coming out. Esau, Edom, really Amalek is not able to hide himself anymore. And I believe, like the other Apostle Hara always say, he's a beast. He's a deranged animal, and you're trying to back him into a corner. He's going to come down with great wrath, right? As, as it's evidently clear that his kingdom is at its end. And all our people who are trusting in this man, we'll get that and close out. All our people who are trusting in this man are going to find themselves in a pitiful case. This is Sirach chapter 12, verse 10. It says, never trust thine enemy, for like as iron rusteth, so is his wickedness. Right? Iron eventually always rusts, So, just like as iron always rusts, his wickedness is always gonna show forth. It's gonna show forth, that he was never to be trusted. That he was always the enemy. He was always your enemy, right? He was always against you, right? And the prophets of Yahweh Shema Shai was there warning you about it the whole time. So with that, pretty edified. Saying something to say, Shalom.